I know that in order for a lot of my clients to grow, they have got to hire somebody to help them. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. I don't know what podcast episode this is, but I know this is the last of a four-part series where I have basically bared my heart, shared a bunch of vulnerable times in business. This is the fourth story I'm going to tell you. I was actually in my inner circle this morning and I was quoting Warren Buffett. I'm pretty sure it was Warren Buffett that said, because we were talking about how, like, somebody in my inner circle. Okay, first of all, hi, how are you? It's Jennifer. Okay, now let's get to it. Okay, someone in my inner circle was like, Jen, do you think we're in a recession? Sales for me are majorly down. And I was like, okay, well, whether or not we're in a recession really doesn't matter. If sales are down, sales are down, right? And so, like, anytime we are in an economic downturn, that will affect your sales. Anytime we are in an election year, that's going to affect your sales. So I was telling her, like, don't worry about whether or not we're in a recession because the government has changed the definition of a recession. Anywho, that happened last year. And so that's not really what you need to be worried about as business owners. We just need to be worried about the dollars in the bank, right? So anyhow, I was telling them, like, during an economic downturn is what we'll call it. You really find out, like, who has the ability to withstand, sales going down, who has the ability to adapt, who can kind of, like, overcome. Because when there are seasons of struggle as small business owners, the cream will definitely rise to the top and others will just have to close down. Just the way it is. So I was telling them, I'm pretty sure it's Warren Buffett has this saying that when the tide goes out, you can see who's been swimming with their pants down. And so, like, I don't know why I just thought of that, but I think it's funny. Right now we're seeing, people swimming with their pants down. And we will until from now till the end of the year. Also, it feels a little vulnerable, just like swimming with your pants down, I guess. I guess that's my lead in to part 4 in this series, where I'm just talking about, like, vulnerable times in my business that I think is helpful for you if you're on the struggle bus. And so if you haven't listened to the series, on episode 434, I know I told you about a time when I launched a 6-week program and not one single person bought it. So yeah, that's fun times. On episode 435, I gave you the story of the time that I had to totally revamp a part of my business that had worked so beautifully for 8 years, but then just was, like, no longer working, and how we've tried to, like, shift and pivot and acclimate to that. In my most recent episode, which was 436, I told you, like, how to know when it's time to just, like, shut the door on a part of your business. And so that was a fun episode. And then on this one, on today, I want to talk to you about some of my own hangups with hiring help, and how this relates to you and how to make sure you're not your own biggest roadblock in your business. Okay. So I want you to know that I feel like I am really, really good at very few things on this side of heaven. One of them is I have zero problems usually hiring things out. I love to have people working for me and with me. I love to have people, like, alongside of me. I love giving other women opportunities. I love staying in my lane and letting other people, like, work in the giftings that God gave them. I am such a firm believer in the fact that we can't all be good at everything, and that you have got to, if you want to grow in business, hire some things out. This is one of the reasons we started my VA service, Businessist, a couple of years ago, because I'm like, I know that in order for a lot of my clients to grow, they have got to hire somebody to help them. They're not ready to hire a full-time permanent employee. So they need a virtual assistant. Let me start the agency so that they can hire people that have been vetted by myself and Team Allwood, to do things, in the fashion that I think that they should be done. At multi-millions of dollars a year in revenue. I think have a pretty good handle on that. And so that's the reason why we started Businessist. And so I have kind of prided myself in always being really good at not feeling like I couldn't hire, not feeling like I shouldn't hire. I've been good at hiring. I really have. My first hire in my business. So I started my business in 1999. It became official in the year 2000 when I was laid off from corporate America. And this was the painting company that I owned in Kansas City for 17 years. And, like, 10 minutes after the company started, I got pregnant with Noah Allwood. He was going to be 23. And so, well, we actually got pregnant and miscarried and then got pregnant again. Okay, if you're doing the math there. But anyhow, so I get pregnant with Noah Allwood, and I kept painting up until, and I was in my 8th month of pregnancy. And, other women, like, they get this little basketball belly. They're so precious. They're so cute when they're pregnant. They wear home their pre-pregnancy jeans. Okay, not this girl at all. I was the size of a small Volkswagen. Like, you can tell that I'm pregnant 10 minutes after being impregnated. They thought perhaps I was having twins on my first pregnancy, because I got so big so quick. Jason's dad had twin brothers, so twins do run in the family. So, they put us in for early sonograms, et cetera. So I'm trying to give you a visual on the fact that I'm 8 months pregnant, still going up and down ladders. It wasn't good, friends. It wasn't good. So in my 8th month of pregnancy, I was coming down the ladder with, Noah Allwood, in utero, and I missed the bottom rung on the extension ladder that I was climbing up in a master bathroom. And I prided myself in really staying active during my pregnancy and feeling like, I wasn't going to like stop what I was doing. And I wanted to stay active and all the things. But when I missed that bottom rung, and I didn't fall or anything, but I just kind of like jarred myself, I was like, okay, this is dumb. Jen, you're being dumb. You've already, had a miscarriage, to no fault of my own. For your first pregnancy, like, you're this close to the end. It's time for you to sit down. Well, at that point, my business was doing so well, you guys, my painting company, that I didn't want to just like stop. I mean, in the year 2000, I still remember talking to my friend Lisa, who was going to do our taxes. My very first year of my painting company, we made $90,000. And when I told her, I remember her saying, "You mean 9,000?" I go, "No, 90,000." I mean, not a whole lot of people make $90,000 their first year of business, especially 24 years ago, right? And so, like, right out of the gate, we had favor. It was doing well. I understood relationship marketing, which is what you had to do back in the year 2000. And so I didn't want to like stop that. We had just made 90K that year. I'm like, winner, winner, chicken dinner. So I was like, well, what can I do? Okay, I can hire other women to come paint for me, and I'll just do the marketing. And so, like, I was always good at the hiring. Okay. And so, what ended up, though, being the part where I struggled wasn't so much the hiring of people and getting help, but it was more the being willing to let go of the reins in some parts of my business. Okay. So, for a while, when I first had other people working for me, I thought, okay, I need to be at the job site. People want to see my face. They're hiring Jennifer Allwood, therefore they want to see Jennifer Allwood. I need to be there to really like critique the work and make sure that it's done to my standards. And so, one of the ways that I failed was I was present more than I needed to be, to the detriment sometimes of the women who worked for me. Like, in my head, I was like, oh, they're going to be mad if I'm out at the pool with my kids. So I better take my kids, like drag them to the job site, interrupt what they're doing, ask a ton of questions, point out where they need to do touch-ups, et cetera. When the truth is, they would have rather that I just been like, hey, how are things going? I'm at the pool with my kids. Holler if you need me. And so I stayed kind of doing those things for too long. I also never quit being the one that was doing the estimates or taking the samples to all of my clients. And those are the sorts of things that 17 years later, when I was closing down the business, I was like, thank you, Jesus, that I never have to do this again. And so I wasn't afraid to hire people, but I was afraid to let the people that I hired run with it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Um, And so that then also kind of rolled over into the online space. So I can remember when, I had an assistant that I hired for 10 hours a week. I told her it could be 20 hours a week years and years ago. And I told her I didn't know how long this would last. Like, I'm hopeful that it goes really well. And then business just started exploding. This was probably 6, 7 years ago. And so she became, from 10 hours a week to 40 hours a week really, really quickly. Well, then I was in a mastermind at the time with Stu McLaren. I've been in, 4 different masterminds throughout my business career in the last 10, 12 years. And so Stu was my coach at the time. And I remember I paid for an additional full day of coaching from him in addition to the mastermind. So some of you, you're so scared to invest in your business. And the mastermind itself was either $20,000 or $25,000 for a year at that point. And then an additional like full day was something like $17,500, I think, if I remember correctly. And I was absolutely willing to do it and got so much value out of that. And Some of you are still having just a hard time spending, $100 a month on a coach, or, applying for my mastermind, which is much, much less. And so, like, I know that I've always needed coaches. I always have, to make me see things differently, to show me the roadblocks that I have in my own business where I can't, because, the thing is, you get so close to your own business, you can't see the forest for the trees. And so I remember Stu and I spent the day with him. And then the way that he did his like one-on-one days, and he was, fabulous at that, is we laid out the year and strategy, and that was great. And then we went to dinner, and we're continuing to just talk through like my current needs in the business and holes and things. And I remember him saying, like, Jennifer, you need to hire a project manager. And I'm like, a project manager? I mean, that sounds official, right? It's one thing to have an assistant or an executive assistant if you want to get, all sexy with the terminology. It's quite another thing to bring on a project manager, because that sounds like dollar signs. And I knew that I was nervous about it, but I also have tried my best to, when I'm under the leadership of a mentor, when I am paying for mentorship and I'm paying for guidance and I'm paying for a mastermind, to really take the strategic advice of the people who have gone before me and implement the things that they're seeing that I'm not. And so even though I was nervous, I put out something, online and on my website for a project manager. Was super nervous about that because that was a full-time position. That was a salary position. That was the most I was going to have paid anyone yet to come to work for me on a full-time basis. And so I did that, and had a great project manager in that role for years and years and years. But here's where I want you to know that I messed up. And, like I said, I was good at hiring. I feel like I'm relatively good at understanding people. So I was, I haven't had any like nightmare hires or anything like that. However, when I hired my first project manager, and some of you will remember Jenna, um, I just had a hard time letting go of all of the control. And so it was like I hired this person to basically come in and be the boss of me. And this is, I remember me telling my coach, that's what I needed. I needed somebody to like look at my calendar and be like, okay, Jen, here's what you need to do today. I needed somebody to go, okay, Jen, we have a launch coming up. What we need from you 2 weeks in advance is this, and a week in advance. And the day of, like, I needed somebody to just be the boss of me, because as someone who is an absolute creative, in addition, as someone who's like, I'm a list checker offer, like I can check off a list with like the best of them. This is why I love my dinosaur binder, my day planner. But I just need somebody to tell me what those things are, because otherwise I'm like, okay, well, I need to do 57 things today, but I can't quite figure out what is priority, what to do first, etc. So I hire the project manager. I spend money for the project manager. I tell her I need her to be the boss of me, and she's the boss of me. But I will also never forget when I got a phone call from her many months in. Okay. It could have even been a year in, I don't know. But I was, oddly enough, so it was, my mastermind coach Stu that told me I needed a project manager. I was actually in Canada, where most of our meetups were at, at a live mastermind event. And she called me about something my project manager did. And in the nicest way that she could, she was telling me, we need to do blah, blah, blah. And I was like, can I check this over? I'd like to see the emails or whatever. And she was like, can I be honest with you? And I was like, of course. And so we had this entire conversation about how she's like, Jennifer, you have got to like trust me enough to take over the things that you've hired me to take over. There is no reason for you to read every single email that's going out. You've literally told us the words. Do you not trust us to type them out? Like, send them? Like, you've hired me to help make some of the decisions so that you don't have to. And instead, like, you want your hand in all the things, and you've become the bottleneck in your own company. Okay. Somebody needs to hear that today, because what I was doing is I was like, let me hire you to do this, but I still want to double check everything. And the double checking of everything is never good for the people you have hired for you, because number one, it's taking of your time. Okay. And number two, it's insinuating to them, it's giving them the signal that, yes, I hired you, saying that I can't wait to trust you with this part of my business. However, I don't trust you enough to completely be hands off. And so it sends a really bad signal to the people who are working for you. Do I think that there still needs to be things that you inspect? Of course. Jason always says you should inspect what you expect. So I think that there's definitely that. But there was no reason that I still needed to look at every social media post before it went out, every single email before it went out, double check all the things. Like it got to where I was really holding things up. And so how did I get past that? Well, years down the line, we still at times this will rear its ugly head. And there are still times that my team will come to me and be like, but Jen, I know that you want to change this or you want to change that or you want to see this or see that, but is it 80% okay? My director of operations, that's kind of her rule. Are you okay with it being 80%? If it's 80% good enough or 80% the way you would have done it, is it okay not to stop the progress of the company? Because one of our core values as a company is flexibility. And when I say flexibility, I mean, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast, like we're in a season where you better adapt and be flexible or you could be left behind. Like this is a season where you need to be trying new things. You need to be thinking differently. If you haven't heard of my breakthrough boot camp that's coming up, you need to get in there because that's exactly the type of things I'm going to be teaching on. This is not a good time economically for you to be like trying the same old stuff that you've been doing in your business for years and years and years and banging your head against a wall, wondering why it's not working. So, since flexibility is a core value of my company, sometimes we have to pivot and shift quickly. And what happens is we will pivot and shift quickly as a team. But then if I'm needing to come in and micromanage every little thing, then we're slowing everything down. And so, my team's like, if it's 80% okay, is that okay enough? And there are times when I'm like, nope, I really think that needs to be changed. But I have got to be okay with an email not sounding exactly like me, with it not having the dot, 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 or the XOXO at the bottom. Does that make sense? And so I think sometimes what happens is we think this is my business. I have to know how to do all the things. No, you don't. No, you don't. I was listening to somebody else the other day on a podcast who was like, I have to know how to do everything in my business in order to, be able to teach other people. And I'm like, bah humbug. This morning I was reaching out to my team and I'm like, I no longer know how to get an affiliate link on Target. And I started to Google it. And then I'm like, can you just give me a link? Like, why do I need to know how to do that? I don't need to know how to do that. There's a lot I do need to know how to do. Getting a Target affiliate link so I can make approximately 37 cents on something that I bought there when I gave it to you guys on Instagram stories, like not worth it. And so I think that sometimes our ego gets really wrapped up when we're hiring other people and we start to feel like, well, if I'm not like having a say in every decision, then it's no longer mine. That is absolutely not the case. We went ahead and made a decision years ago that I give my team the full autonomy to make financial decisions of anything that's under $500. Don't even ask me, just do it. If somebody needs a refund and it's $499 and you think that that's appropriate, you don't even have to run it by me. Just take care of it. Because otherwise you get so in the weeds with the like day-to-day little things that you lose sight of the bigger picture, which is what you're supposed to be doing as the entrepreneur. You're the visionary. You're the one that's supposed to be casting and setting the vision. You're the one that's supposed to be like, figuring out the big picture things and where you're going as an organization. And who gets an affiliate link for you, that does not matter. It literally does not. And so I hope this is helpful for someone today because it took me longer than it should have to trust the people who work for me to do the jobs that I had hired them to do. And again, there's still times when I go backwards and fall into old patterns, especially when things aren't going in business. And somebody needs to hear this right now, especially when things aren't going exactly the way that I would like for them to in terms of results. Then I'll come in and all of a sudden I'll try to micromanage everything. It's like if things feel like they're out of control, then I look for, well, what can I control? Can I control the name of that particular podcast episode? Can I control the who sent out that email? It was missing an apostrophe. Like, and it's little stuff that's nitpicky that doesn't matter. Yes, but does it matter really? No, no. And so becoming your biggest roadblock, your biggest bottleneck in business, it will keep you smaller than what you want to be. I promise you. And I hope that this was really helpful for someone today who really needs to start trusting the people that you have hired to do the work that you have hired them to do. You don't need to double check everything. You don't need to have your hand in everything. Trust that there are people who are for you and are really hoping to please you in a way and to do a good job on your behalf. Okay, I hope that's helpful. I did want to really quickly give a shout out to Amber from Rosebud's Real Food on Instagram. You can go find Rosebud's Real Food on Instagram. She was the one that gave like all of the salts and the dips away for our mastermind meetup in Scottsdale that we just had, which is amazing. She threw something in the swag bag for us. So her and I were having a conversation. She's like, you know what I really miss, Jen? She goes, I really miss when on your podcast, you used to do podcast reviews and give a shout out to other small business owners. She's like, I just thought it was such a great way for you to tell other people about other female owned businesses and where to find them online and what it is that they do. And I'm like, Amber, you're absolutely right. And so I'm going to bring that back today. So I want to give a quick shout out to Brandy the Baker. And so first of all, I love that. Brandy with an I, Brandy the Baker said, Jennifer, your podcast is just what I need after binge listening to nearly 30 episodes this week. I'm so thankful for Jennifer and the amazing, insightful, tough love message she gives in her podcast. I'm eager for more episodes. Well, thank you, Brandy the Baker. That's amazing. And I just pray a blessing over you and every single thing you set your hand to, including all of that baking in Jesus' name. And so thank you for that review. The reviews really matter. Oddly enough, I got a message the other day from my friend, Christy Wright. And Christy's like, Jen, do you know how many book reviews Fear of the Boss of You has? Or Fears of the Boss of You? I'm like, yes. And that's the name of my book that released 4 years ago. And it has well over 2,000 reviews. She's like, that is insane. And I'm like, well, thank you. And so I forget like that you guys are amazing at leaving reviews and it matters. So thank you. And if you have an opportunity to go leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, please do that. And I would appreciate it so, so much. So if you heard me talk about Business Breakthrough, the bootcamp that we're getting ready to offer, and you want notification when that is open, you can go to jenniferallwood.com/email and I'll make sure and send you an invitation that's completely free boot camp. We're super excited about it. It's going to help those of you that are really stuck right now in this season of business. Trust me, it's not just you. And there's a lot of people who are. So I hope that this was helpful today, friends. This was the last of my very vulnerable episodes. Be blessed. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So if you're watching on the YouTubes, your dad says that this necklace looks like bull testicles. And now that's all I can see. I'm watching myself up here and all I can think about is bull testicles. And that is not appropriate